Oliver Fegan from usherU. Welcome to IrishStartUpTV.
Thanks, Richard. Happy to be here.
Tell us a bit about the business.
So usherU is a cinema app which allows people essentially book tickets in 3 clicks. It's powered very much on personalising cinema for everyone. So we learn what types of films you like when you engage with the app. If you're looking at particular cinemas, days of the week, types of films you're looking at, actors, genre, language, nationality. We start to learn a little bit more about what you like. And then when there's films on that match your taste, we either send you a push notification to book, or you can just check any stage and book tickets.
Cool, so is this a two-sided model then, or is it just focused on the end user?
There's probably 3 players that we deal with mainly. So you've got the consumers who we're trying to get to go to the cinema. You've got the cinemas who have at the moment around 75% spare capacity at prime time. And then you've got film distributors who spend a huge amount of money marketing films to consumers, but they're not getting enough people in, and I think their ways of connecting with each consumer is actually quite difficult because they're not responsible for the transaction. So what we're trying to do is to help the distributors lower their marketing cost, stop consumers forgetting to go and see films by alerting them to say, is this film that you will like or potentially will like is leaving the cinema on Thursday. You've got 3 days to book a ticket, buy it now, and it could be a flat price ticket, or they could get an incentive such as a free popcorn, free soft drink, or whatever the cinema wants to do to incentivize someone to go at the last minute.
When I first heard about you guys, I understood that you were helping cinemas to fill empty seats. Is that where you started? Or take us back maybe in...
Yeah, so I suppose when we started off, we got funding in the UK from the British Film Institute and I See Tomorrow, which is like Enterprise Ireland, and very much what our actually core remit was to bring data into the cinema industry. So really to actually start to track an awful lot of stuff that's not being found out.
And when was this?
It was a good question. End of 2014. So it's quite a while ago now. So we sort of had 6 months. We got the funding. We went and met the distributors. We went and met cinemas. We went and met a lot of consumers. We asked, what the problems were, why you don't go to the cinema, what all the pain points were. And so our initial concept was to sell, seats at a discount. And I think what we learned through the first few months in beta, if a ticket's £2 or €2 cheaper, it's not going to incentivize you if you don't like the film. So we did that, and we've got good sales for it, but I think the core problem is sometimes it's quite difficult for a consumer to book tickets, and people intend to go and see films. The figure is 92% of intentions to see a film don't convert into a sale. So someone is watching the Graham Norton show, sees the panel on, says that looks like a great film, I'd love to see that film, and then
We've all been there.
Yeah, like everyone does it, and you're 2 weeks later, you're busy, you're working hard, you have to go out to a birthday party or whatever, and you just forget to see it. So with the data, what we're trying to do is actually learn about you, your film choice, and just to convert 1 or 2 of those extra intentions. So it's not, I suppose at the moment it's 4.3 is the average number of times someone goes to cinema in Ireland, and the UK it's 2
per annum.
Per annum. In the UK it's 2.4. So Ireland is huge. Actually, we're one of the biggest cinema nations in the world. And I think we see and we speak to everyone and say, what films did you see last year? Or what was the last film you went to see in the cinema? And people say to you, I saw a film 2 months ago. And you go, what was the title? And then they go, something that was out a year ago. And they go, I can't believe I haven't been to the cinema in the last year. And they go, I love the experience. It's a bit expensive. The popcorn's expensive. But I love it. I've got my best childhood memories going to the cinema. I wish I went more often, but I just forget, or I'm too busy.
On the note of childhood memories, actually, you just remind me that there was a BBC TV show the other day, and they basically track people through the decades, and the idea was that you'd be in a different decade per episode. And they talked about how between the 70s and the 80s, suddenly by the 80s, you could have VHS and you could borrow them from the local shops, whereas previously the only option to see a film was in the cinema. To what extent, with Netflix appearing and also with the ability to download movies from iTunes, has that also caused more challenges to get people into the cinema?
It's definitely caused more challenges, and I think when we started the business, or before we started it, I was sort of looking, saying, is cinema dead? Is this an industry that's on the wane? And we looked at the statistical figures are actually very scary if you look at them on the large scale. So I think it was 1.4 billion people went to the cinema in the UK That was the number of people who went in 1946, which was the highest year of all time. People went to the news. You know, you go to the cinema to watch the news. To hear what's going on, people went to the cinema. And it's dropped, I think the figure last year was 170 million.
Wow.
So it's a massive decline, and you've had television, then you had VHS, and now you have streaming. But there's been a massive upsurge of cinema in the last sort of year or 2 years, and the way we look at it, and this is, you know, I didn't know this before starting this business, things like Netflix have really helped the cinema industry, and I think people within the cinema industry don't see it like that, or maybe it's not their initial sort of view of it. But nobody was watching foreign language films a couple of years ago. No one went to watch documentaries a couple of years ago. People now watch Making a Murder or Narcos. They're used to watching foreign language films or documentaries. We learn there's different art forms, and it's not all about Hollywood, and it's not all about X-Men and Star Wars. There's lots of other good films. So I actually believe it's going to really help the cinema industry. I think in the next 5 years, like most other industries, you know, you can eat for cheap at home, you can get takeaway, but the restaurant experience is about time with your friends and getting out of the house. And the cinema experience, I think, is a beautiful place to watch a film where you're not looking at your phone, you're not flicking through Facebook, you're not flicking through Twitter.
No distractions.
There's no distractions. It's an experience where you're there to watch the art form of film. And I think I use this sort of expression, which, you know, film is art and cinema is its gallery. And I think for people who appreciate the art form of film, there's no better place than the cinema. And I really see that becoming more important as we have, you know, media everywhere. We can watch films, half of them are on YouTube half the time, do you know what I mean? They'll be up for a couple of weeks or a couple of days, and they'll come back down. People are streaming legally and illegally. You can download a film the second it comes out into the cinema because there's a legal copy somewhere, but you're destroying the film. You're watching it on a small screen, and the sound is terrible, and you might see a man getting up, and you're destroying a new film.
It's not the same at all, especially for something like Star Wars.
Yeah, exactly.
It was something very sort of visceral and magic when you're sitting in this black room, and then suddenly the music blares and the theme tune and the yellow writing comes up on the screen. You can't really reproduce that on a smartphone.
No, and there's so many films like that, and it's not just the big films. I went to see Force Majeure, which is a Swedish film, and it's on a ski slope, or in a skiing town, I think in Austria or Switzerland. Like, the vistas are just beautiful on the big screen. You know, you're watching this and it's beautiful music and you're hearing it loud and you're actually just taking it all in. A film that's set in rural Ireland, you know, you're watching that on your phone, you're not getting the full
vista. Yeah, like even The Guard, if you're watching it on the cinema versus watching it on the phone, it's actually a very different experience.
Very different. Yeah. It's nearly like, you know, a book versus a film. It's a different way of watching a film.
It's very true. And take us back then a little bit. You mentioned you got some supports from the UK. So where did you originally start out? What inspired you to start out?
So we started. So we're Dublin based. We have, I suppose, an office space through Wire in the UK, which is great. And very luckily in Ireland, we've a space here through FCR Media. Where I suppose the inspiration came from is my brother's a filmmaker, and we were always talking about the space and I suppose the future of, you know, cinema versus Netflix, and I think one of the things that we learned, and through one of his good pals, we were talking about the space, and he'd worked in the cinema industry, and he said the main problem is people come into the cinema and say, oh, you know, where's that film on? And they're like, it left 2 weeks ago, and people are complaining. So we sort of saw there was a problem there, and we saw that
there's like an information asymmetry.
Yeah. It's people just, you know, we used to have in the back of the paper, and I remember always on a Friday morning you get the paper out and see what's in the cinema, and that was the way people looked at it. Now they're not in, you know, you have to go to entertainment.ie or usherU to find out what's on, but an awful lot of it's one way, so you have to go to find it. We thought, you know, if you can actually make it two-way, and every time someone engages we learn more about what you like, and then we see a particular title that suits your tastes, we can send you a push notification. We can change this whole thing and stop people missing films. So it's very much, I suppose, since we were kids we were making films, and one of my business partners, well, the two business partners, Catherine Downs, her sister actually starred in my brother's first film.
Really?
Which is very funny.
What was the first film?
It was called Man-Made Men. It was about a concept about a guy trying to prove that God didn't exist by creating life, and it's a great film. He made this, I suppose, on a shoestring budget. And through like our childhood we were making like, you know, off the wall sort of films. So it's something we've always been involved in. I never thought I would get a chance to actually work, you know, in this industry.
Yeah.
Like it's an industry I think a lot of people would like to work in. And while we're on the outside doing a technology solution, we get some great perks. You know, there's, what's a day called? Slate Day, where all the distributors from the UK come in and show the films before they actually even release the trailers. They're basically telling all the cinemas about what's on and their plans for next year, and you're sort of pinching yourself, you know, seeing all the stuff that's going on. We've gone to the Berlinale, the European film market, where Catherine last week was pitching to, I suppose, the big and great of the film industry about the future of innovation. And I think it's a great time to be in our space, because it's an industry which has the Netflix, all these different things going on. And if these guys change, and they need to change, you need to, you know, I think, put the consumer first, where in the past maybe I think they thought people just come to the cinema. And I think, you know,
had any kind of intelligence gone into how you quantify the price? Because from my experience, and we're probably a similar age, the cinema seemed to have become a lot more expensive, and I'm not too sure that the experience got an awful lot better. So had any thought gone in before? Because you mentioned that you're bringing data into this process.
Yeah, like, there is dynamic pricing in the cinema industry, a little bit more than we probably think. Again, I didn't think there was any at all, but they've started to do a lot of things to try and get more information. So membership schemes, it's cheaper certain days of the week, certain times of the day. I think for me that the biggest problem is that a consumer sees the cinema as a one-off experience. The cinema sees each transaction as a one-off experience. So every single time someone comes in, they're paying with cash. Up till probably 2 or 3 years ago, it was pretty much all walk-ups. So they had no data, they didn't know what was going on. What we're trying to do is the two sides. One is keep the standard price and just get people in, and just make it simpler. Like the key thing for us, and this is definitely what consumers told us, is if you can actually make it simple to book all cinema tickets in 3 clicks. I have my car details stored once. I say I want to go to movies at Dundrum or the Lighthouse or the IFI or Odeon, and I say I want to see that, and I can book it. They go, we won't go elsewhere. And
there's so much stress filling out your address and all of that, and then having a little error saying no, your address doesn't match our file. So
exactly,
you're removing all of that hassle and making it easy.
Yeah, exactly. And certain chains, even in Ireland, if you're going in and it sometimes redirects you to the .co.uk website.
Yeah, I've had that experience. It's very frustrating.
Yeah, and you don't have a postcode, and it doesn't recognise your postcode unless it's, you know, a 7-digit sort of British postcode. So I think the cinemas, and we hope they make it simpler and simpler, and they are definitely improving. But what we're trying to do is do this agnostic of cinema, try and actually make one place where people buy tickets and where all the cinemas benefit. I think for us, like, the main communication thing that we needed to tell the cinemas, and it took a while, was we only succeed if we get someone into your cinema seat. Every new customer who comes in is an extra opportunity to sell popcorn to, is an extra opportunity to get to join your membership club, and any of the other services you get. And I think cinema has like a vicious circle. The less you go to the cinema, the less you see trailers, the less you see a film that you want to see in the future, and you end up actually just going to the cinema less. So it's about sort of putting the consumer first, making it simple for them to come, letting them know there's great films coming out in the future, and they'll see other things. They'll remember the experience is great. They'll know the experience is better than watching it on your iPhone or your iPad, or, you know, half watch. I always do it. I obviously watch Netflix like most people, but I half watch stuff and I fall asleep with it.
Yeah, there's nothing worse than that. You never really go back to that last 15 minutes, do you?
You don't have a clue what's going on.
Yeah.
I'm actually doing it at the moment with Better Call Saul.
Oh yeah.
I've watched the first episode, I think 3 times of the second series, and then I pressed it and I started watching the first series, and I was going, are they going back in time or forward in time? Because I couldn't even remember it. So you end up, you know, butchering a lot of films, and I think that's one of the things we're really trying to change.
It's really exciting to see your passion for this space, and also to go back to the fact that you had such a strong interest before. You know, would you have seen yourself getting involved in this space were it not for the opportunity of creating your own involvement?
Definitely not. Like,
Really?
I never thought I would work in this space. You know, I've had a strong interest. My brother's careers, you know, he's sort of going 7 or 8 years now, so we're good friends, and we used to share an office. So I used to see a lot of creatives coming in. but I never saw an opportunity to work in the space. I never was going to work for Universal or go and work for a cinema. It wasn't.
What were you doing before?
So I started in management consultancy in the UK. I came back, I worked in a family business for a few years with my other brother, with a bit of a mafia.
But a million miles away obviously then from cinema or creative.
Yeah, it was like food service distribution I did, and then I actually had a business called Tempster which allowed restaurants to sell empty tables. So it was through doing this I think I had built up a bit of experience. Like I cobbled together Tempster from, I wasn't a techie. I managed to get a couple of friends to help get sort of version 1 out, and I learned a lot about the space. And I think with that experience, and I was able to get some funding for it, which was great.
For Tempster?
For usherU. So I suppose we were #1 selling app in Ireland with Tempster a couple of times, and we got a bit of publicity, and I managed to get a good friend of mine who's a great developer to come on board based on, I suppose, the bit of experience we had. So he's a co-founder called Andreas Macias, he's Spanish. And Catherine Downs, who's another co-founder, she was in Google at the time. I was over doing Startup Chile,
oh, right.
which was great. And during that period, she came over to visit, and we just had a chat. And she had a great job in Google.
There's a great Irish community at Startup Chile, or a great alumni of Irish people.
Yeah. There's actually Olin, one of the guys here at the office.
Oh, really? Oh, yeah, of course, yeah. And James McBennett as well.
Yeah, exactly. He was just before us. It's a great place to go.
Yeah.
A great experience. But I think for me, that was great as Catherine came to visit, and we went on a road trip. It's like a 9-hour car journey, talking about her career, where she was going. I was talking about, Tempster, and while we were selling, good number of restaurant bookings, it was never going to be a scalable business. The space that we were in at the time, Priceline, who owned Booking.com, had bought over OpenTable. The main problem we had in the restaurant space is that we didn't integrate with the point of sale. So when a booking came through from our platform, it didn't write it immediately into the the back end of a restaurant's booking system. So it was all a very manual process, and that just caused problems. So with usherU, what we're doing is we're integrating with all the point of sales for the cinemas. Once someone buys a ticket with us, it writes it immediately on their system. You go straight into the cinema. You can use either a QR code or a barcode, and they can just scan it if they do that, or you have a code and you just type it into the point of sale there, or the ticket collection points. So
this really plays back then to the big data piece, that there's some kind of a circular piece, that you're all within that ecosystem.
Exactly. I think it comes back to where, I suppose, the British Film Institute and I See Tomorrow we're looking for. There's a bit of a disconnect between the players in the industry, between who's going to the cinema and the guys who are spending a huge amount of money marketing films, and the figures are crazy now. It was roughly 2 to 1, so if you spend 100 million on a film, you're going to have to spend 200 million marketing it. It's going up to 3 to 1 for films. If it's a small budget film, they don't have the marketing budget, so they might put a little bit in. And then it's just hope that you get a good, one bit of publicity and you'll get people in.
Ip-dip sky blue.
Yeah.
So could then, have you got some kind of sense, and from the management consultancy background, about how you can kind of do some kind of regression work on this and figure out that if you can improve the communication by X, that perhaps you can reduce the cost of...
Big time. So we've worked with a lot of the big distributors to date. We've done quite a few sort of pilots with them where we're actually promoting the film directly to consumers from the distributor.
Right.
That's where I think it's most interesting, is because the biggest pain point is from the distributor who's spending huge amounts of money trying to get you into the cinema. If we can lower that cost, it's better to have a pain point than a vitamin, the terms yourself. And they're all very keen, and we've got approached by all the big players to come in and meet and explaining about the data set we gather. And I think the figures are crazy. I think we've 60,000 films that have gone through the cinema in the UK and Ireland in the last 18 months nearly.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
Through film festivals, through second releases, Stanley Kubrick films coming back, one-off screenings. So
I had no idea. I would have said, if you said guess,
500.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
It was 500. And we say this to cinemas, and they're like, no, you can't do that. With actors, directors, we just have this. It's a huge number. There's, I think, it's 7.5 million cinema listings that we have data on. Across 1,000 or 1,200 venues. So what we're doing is just gathering this information, learning about each consumer, what they like, and trying to put intelligence on it. So we're building models at the moment. We've worked with the UCD Insight Institute, and that's basically to say, here's what is important to different types of customers, what they like to see. Not every customer is different, so one particular person might be very influenced by the directors or awards it's won. Another person might hate a film if it's won awards. So we're trying to make sense of this, and this is going to take us, forever to get it smarter and learn. But the basics that we know very quickly is someone has looked at these 10 cinemas or these 3 cinemas and they never look at any other ones. We know someone has looked at 5 horror films or romantic comedies, and we get enough information from that to to incentivize people in. Examples where it works very well. There was a music documentary that was playing in the Barbican in London. We looked at people who looked at Amy, Cobain, Whiplash, a few films like this, and we said, okay, here's the cinema, we know where it is, let's look at a 1 kilometre radius around it, or people who've looked at that cinema. It's a one-off event, let's send a push notification out to them. And the second we do that, we get people just booking straight away.
Brilliant. Genius.
Yeah, so
it's amazing to think it's such a no-brainer.
No one
ever did this before.
It makes sense, and the cinema's happy. The guys who run the festival were happy. The guy who actually was the filmmaker was at it was happy. There was a live band playing at it, and it was a great event. And everyone who went to it has never been to film festivals, or a lot don't go to film festivals. So we're saying to the guys who are interested in film, here's a great film, suits you. It could be at a film festival. There's some free screenings we do. There's sometimes short film festivals. It's just the content, and it's all content led in this industry. And what we're trying to do is put the content first, not just the cinema, not the budgets. And trying to build cohorts of people who are interested in particular titles.
So it sounds like it's very much building an advertising model around the needs of the consumer, and that's going to be much more efficient than maybe a traditional advertising approach in the old days, where people just said, this is what you should buy, and go and buy it, and it's very generic.
Yeah, exactly.
You've had some fun successes recently as well. You're featured in Forbes magazine. I mean, this is the Bible of business.
Yeah, amazing. It was great. It's hard to understand sometimes why these things happen. We're very lucky from the start. We got covered by BBC on television. They came into the Wire Academy in London.
Okay.
We basically met them. We had a bit of a chat about what we're doing, and it was about the time Orange Wednesdays was finishing, which is a big campaign in the UK. They loved this, they thought it was interesting, and they featured us. We've had the likes of the Sunday Times again approaching us, and I suppose, and from startups yourself, it's up and down. So.
It's funny too how if you get on certain stations in Ireland, you won't, or you might break your servers, but you won't make any sales out of it.
Yeah.
So it's important, I suppose, to understand which media things are worth getting involved in.
Yeah, I think you can't. It's great getting media, but it's not the be all and end all. I think we're so far from success, and most startups, like you're a startup, you are the way the market sees it is you're destined for failure. You're trying to remove the barriers that are going to cause the failure. Getting publicity helps. It helps with going out to meet investors and whatnot.
It's great validation.
Yeah, and it all helps. But I think the core thing is we've been really strict on this. And Catherine, who's come in from Google, she said let's meet with consumers every month. Let's sit down. Let's ask them what they like. Let's ask them what features we should add. Don't try to think of it ourselves because we're just 3.
Yeah, it's super important not to be flattered as well by the feedback.
You can't be.
To find that balance, and ultimately that's where great product management comes into it.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, one has to back oneself, but subject to listening to everybody that's in the ecosystem, from the consumers to the media, to the board members.
Yeah, I think my dad always said to me is papers don't refuse ink. If someone wants to write a story, that's great, but the next day you're forgotten, and then you need to just continually do things to improve and to engage and to better what you're doing, I think, to make a success of it. So it's a long road, I think.
Where to next?
So we're launching the ability to buy all cinema tickets at the moment, which is an exciting thing for us.
Rather than focusing around cinemas, it's focusing around being able to empower people to purchase the tickets to see the films that they want to see based on their location and their preferences.
Exactly. We sort of started off, we had the listings, it went nowhere. Consumers said to us, I'd love you to take us to the cinema website. Then we took them to the cinema website and the consumer said to us, you know, you're taking us there and sometimes it's not mobile optimized and it's a bit of a pain, and they said, you know, we'd love you to be able to actually do the transaction. It's very simple to do with us. Can you do it with them? So we started to do the integration with the guys who do the point of sale, which is tough. It's been tough. A couple of guys we've worked with to do the point of sale integration were the first to use their API. They've developed an API, but they'd never actually used it before. So we're guinea pigs. Which brings problems, and it takes a bit of time, and you have to have a bit of patience from both sides. You know, we're annoying these guys saying, "Can you do this? Can you do this?" But they've all been great.
Yeah, it's definitely a language style when dealing with developers, and once you can have those conversations, and you can really build cool things then.
Yeah, exactly. And I think the cinemas, you know, have been really supportive of it. So we're asking to do this, but we're sort of saying is, you know, it's on behalf of the cinema. We're trying to get extra sales for the cinema, which is going to benefit them. It can help them get other customers who are maybe using a point of sale system that doesn't integrate. So in the long term, they can get more business from it. So I think it's the whole win-win is very much where we're coming from. Like, everyone benefits if we get more people into the cinema.
Absolutely.
And that's the basis of our business. And the more we can communicate that with people, I think it's the most important thing.
Well, it's very exciting to see that you have this incredible passion, and it's also very inspiring to see that you've gone from a position whereby you never thought you'd get into this space to building yourself into this space.
Yeah.
It's been an absolute pleasure hearing the story, and thanks so much for taking the time to share it today.
Thanks very much, Richard.
Thanks, Oliver.
Okay. Cheers, appreciate it.